When watching, this is Rabbi Moshe Otero with the Ways of Israel, a very cold morning indeed, as we continue learning and studying to be a Jew. And we are now on chapter 19 in the book. So if you're following along with us, please look at page 287 in the book To Be a Jew. No man without a wife, neither woman without a husband, nor both of them without God, or without God. This according to Genesis Rabbah 8:9. This relationship is reflected in the Jewish wedding ceremony, and by law and tradition, the ceremony establishes a new family. Although the preparations for a wedding ceremony often involve some anxiety, and in truth it's simpler and prepare for a wedding ceremony than to prepare for the marriage itself. How much easier it is to recognize from the onset the physical maturity and economic sufficiency than it is to know if one has reached an emotional maturity and psychological readiness for the marriage. Proper preparation for a wedding should begin with a thorough consideration of the nature of the family life, especially in the faith of Judaism, and of the nature of the relationship of husband and wife, as we have seen on page 133 and 135. The wedding ceremony is the beginning of a holy covenant between the husband and the wife. The Jewish wedding ceremonies are made up of two parts. It's called the betrothal, or sanctification, Keddushin, during which time the bride is betrothed to the groom as he places a ring upon her finger and says, Harei et mekedushet li b'taba'at zo kedem Moshe ve'Israel. Kadat Moshe ve'Israel. In other words, Harei al mekedushet li b'taba'at zu kadat Moshe ve'Israel. Be sanctified or betrothed to me with this ring in accordance to the laws of Moses and Israel. And with this statement, the bride consents and she becomes his wife. The part requires the presence of two qualified witnesses that sees all of this process. And this is important for a visual witness to be present. Marriage Nisuin is a consummation of the betrothal. It symbolizes by the bride and the groom standing beneath a covering or a chuppah. If there is not a chuppah, the talit is used as such. While the seven benedictions or Sheva Brachas are then recited, the recitation of these benedictions requires the presence of a minyan, or at least 2 to 3 witnesses present. In most cases, they prefer to have a minyan. The blessing appropriate to these two parts of the ceremonies are said over a cup of wine by those officiating the ceremony. The bride and the groom drink from that same glass of wine. Says the wedding contract or ketubah, which obligates the husband to support his wife, and must be drawn up prior to the ceremony. It is customary for the ketubah to be read during the wedding ceremony between the Keddushin and the Nisuin. This is why in many cases they'll explain what is in the contract, since in most cases it's in Hebrew or in Aramaic. And thus knowing what's in there should be made known to both parties. The wedding contract or tekubah, which obligates the husband to support his wife, must be drawn up prior to the ceremony. It is customary for this ketubah to be read during the ceremony of the wedding between the Keddushin and the Nisuin. The custom is not to use rings with diamonds or other precious stones for the ceremony. Rather, a normal flat gold ring or silver ring can be used as related to the age-old desire to avoid any possibility of fraud, which would then invalidate the marriage. If a bride consents to the marriage and was motivated by the value of the gift that she was getting, with the precious stone turned out to be fake or far less than the value that she assumed, grounds for invalidating the marriage would exist. If a ring with precious stones is used and the bride is aware of its value, there is no question as to the validity of the marriage ceremony. The ring that is given to the bride at the ceremony may not be borrowed, must belong to the groom. The ring is regarded as a gift to the bride and not just an object used in a symbolic act. One cannot give away something that one has only borrowed, and that's why it has to be ownership by the chatan, and gives it to the kala, the husband, or the man to the woman, and it cannot be borrowed, and it does not, if itself not owned by him. If there is a family heirloom which possesses a sentimental value, the couple wants to use it for ceremony, it must be done if the groom acquires it from a legal owner as a gift or through a purchase, and then he is free to give it to his bride. The ring becomes hers to do as she wishes. In other words, there's no refunds. It's customary to break a small glass at the conclusions of the wedding ceremony to recall the destruction of the ancient temple in Jerusalem in the year 70 of the Common Era by the Romans. And this I would encourage you to read again, Tisha B'Av on page 263, about the breaking of a glass and similar practices on the occasion it's called for by the Mishnah to recall the destruction. Through the Jewish state was reestablished in 1948, the Jewish sovereignty over the Temple Mount returned in 1967, but the temple itself has not yet been restored, which is what we are calling on to occur. The temple itself was not restored, and thus the broken glass continues to symbolize the incompleteness of the religious restoration of Israel. The chuppah covering symbolizes the consummation of the marriage, and this is indicated by having the bride and the groom retire to the room by themselves in yichud, in a solitary confinement for a short period of privacy immediately following the ceremony. Festive meals that follows the ceremony is classified as a Sudat Mitzvah, a religious feast. Sheva Baracha or Sheva Barachot are said at the wedding ceremony and are repeated at the conclusion of the wedding dinner as well. As they say, Birkat Hamazon, and the several blessings are said and recited. It's a great mitzvah to make the groom and the bride merry. Music, dancing, and expression of great joy are traditionally accompanying all Jewish wedding ceremonies. Wedding ceremonies may not take place on Shabbat nor festivals, even the intermediate days of Passover and Sukkot, nor during the 3 weeks for the 17th of Tammuz and through Tisha B'Av, nor during the 3 days of period of the Sephirah, nor a regular fast day. Now we're going to take a look in our next video about prohibited marriage. Marriages that cannot be done. And we're going to take a look at that in our second video, because this question was asked to me by someone who happened to be gay and asked me if I could marry him and his boyfriend. And I said absolutely not, because it goes and infringes against what the Torah says that's considered to'eva, abomination. And thus, one of the things that I in particular, do is not marry gay couples. And I recommended him that if he insists to go to one of those liberal, leftist, progressive rabbis, that would probably do so. But even at that point, in my estimation, my humble estimation, that person would be infringing against what the Torah calls to'eva. This is Rabbi Moshe Otero, and we're going to go into prohibited marriages, not only in this situation, but in others as well. So stay tuned for our next video.